Good morning and welcome to Mining Review Africa's very first digital event of the year, themed Putting Mining Exploration in the Spotlight. A very relevant topic considering South Africa's release of the exploration strategy and implementation plan. We are pleased to have all of you on board. My name is Shengiwe Mutaung. I'm Mining Review Africa's multimedia journalist, and I'll be the program director for today. As a starting point, I'd like to introduce and thank the Council for Geoscience for sponsoring this event. Let's quickly take a look at some of the house rules before we begin. The session will be available on demand after today on miningreview.com. Be sure to share this with your fellow colleagues who couldn't join us for the live session. Secondly, we are also welcoming questions from our audience today prior to the start of our panel discussion. You can submit them via the live discussion box on the right-hand side of your screen. And lastly, I would like to encourage you to share today's webinar with your social media networks using hashtag MiningReviewAfrica. Mining in South Africa has come into the spotlight. Investor attractiveness and red tape in prospecting right applications are amongst the numerous challenges faced by the industry. The purpose of this webinar is to understand the state of exploration and hopefully generate ideas that can reignite this very key process in the mining sector. We sternly believe that effective change starts with dialogue, and that's what we're here for. So we'll start the panel discussion to delve into this topic, present some exciting innovations in exploration technology, and also look at our mining elites. Those are the key players who've done exceptionally well in exploration. But before we begin, let's take a look at a short video on our mining elites in Africa exploration winner, Ivanhoe Mines.
There is no doubt that exploration underpins the mining sector. It is the hard work and commitment of mining companies in this regard that has resulted in successful mining operations over the decades. Exploration further adds to the longevity of existing mines, which in turn benefits economies and communities. That is why every year Mining Elites in Africa honors those companies who have excelled in exploration. Now, for those of you who don't know, Mining Elites in Africa is an annual publication dedicated to recognizing those leaders, projects, and companies within the African mining sphere that are making a positive change in our industry. All our leaders and projects, submitted in the form of nominations from industry and reviewed by a highly expert and independent advisory board, has resulted in those that truly stand out. You can download a copy of this year's Mining Elites in our handout section and read all about those who are making a difference in mining in Africa. This year's winner in our exploration category is what is being hailed as the next great copper frontier. I'm referring to Ivanhoe Mines' Western Foreland project. Ivanhoe Mines, responsible for two of the greatest copper discoveries in history, at its Kamoa-Kakula project west of Kolwezi in the DRC, is aiming for fresh exploration success on its Western Foreland licenses in the same area. The company has committed itself to an extensive exploration program, and this includes 40,000 meters of combined air core and diamond drilling, airborne and ground-based geophysics, soil sampling, and road construction. The Western Foreland project consists of 17 licenses to the north, south, and west of the Kamoa mining licenses, which cover 2,550 square kilometers. The primary exploration target in the Western Foreland area is Kamoa-Kakula style sedimentary copper mineralization. Exploration models that led to the discoveries of Kakula, Kakula West, and the Kamoa North Bonanza Zone on the Kamoa-Kakula mining licenses are also being applied to Western Foreland land packages by the same team of exploration geologists responsible for these successes. New resources that might be discovered on Western Foreland will ultimately feed into the Kamoa-Kakula copper complex. The first mine of the complex, Kakula, achieved commercial production in May 2021 and is projected to produce approximately 200,000 tons per annum of copper. It will be followed by other mines in successive phases of the project. We are now going to play a 5-minute video from Ivanhoe Mines, and although this doesn't cover Western Foreland specifically, it showcases the large extent of exploration work this company has undertaken in the DRC and the phenomenal success thereafter in producing a world-class asset. Enjoy.
Thank you, Jared. Amazing work that Ivanhoe Mines has undertaken in the DRC with phenomenal results. All right, let's get into our first session. And as part of this, I'd like to invite you to participate in a poll. And if time allows, we'll share this with our panel. The question is, what can South Africa do to encourage more exploration in the country? You can pick any of the following answers. Is it one, the ministry needs to step up, that is to reduce the backlog of prospecting rights applications and mineral rights transfers? Two, South Africa needs a modern cadastral system. Three, new technologies are needed to discover all bodies that have been missed. Or four, no use. South Africa is a mature mining industry with little exploration potential left. Those are the four options you have. So I'm going to read the question again. What can South Africa do to encourage more exploration in the country? The first option is the ministry needs to step up, that is to reduce the backlog of prospecting rights applications and mineral rights transfers. Two, South Africa needs a modern cadastral system. Three, new technologies are needed to discover old bodies that have been missed. Or four, no use. South Africa is a mature mining industry with little exploration potential left. So those are the four options rather that you have to answer this question. What can South Africa do to encourage more exploration in the country? All right, poll time is up. We'll share the results later on in the session. Let's take a look at the status of exploration in South Africa. Laura Cornish, Editor-in-Chief of Mining Review Africa, will take the floor as moderator. On the panel, we have Musa Mabuza, CEO of Council of Geosciences, Errol Smart, CEO of Orion Metals, and Grant Mitchell, Head of the Junior and Emerging Miners Desk at the Minerals Council, South Africa. Laura, it's over to you.
Thanks so much, Lingiwe, and again, welcome to everyone. As you know, I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Mining Review Africa, and I'm here to moderate our first panel discussion delving into exploration, specifically in South Africa. Before we get started, I would like to invite Mr. Moza Mabuza, who is the CEO for the Council of Geoscience, to give a short opening introduction. Moza, are you there to kick us off? You're on mute.
Oh, I see I'm muted. Good morning, Laura. Good morning, panelists.
Morning, Mr. Moza. You can give us maybe a 5-minute introduction to the Council for Geoscience before we kick into our panel discussion this morning.
Oh, thank you very much. So the Council for Geoscience is a state-owned entity. We have been around since the 1800s. We were established as the Geological Survey in 1912. In fact, this year we are celebrating 110 years of existence since we had been established as the Geological Survey and subsequently the Council for Geoscience. These are exciting times in terms of the work that we are mandated to do, the work that we are building on, that our forebearers have done ever so exceptionally over the years, that has led to the discovery of the many mines that we are mining today. And we believe that with the work that we are doing today, there are many more mines that we are going to discover. I'm very excited in seeing what the participants think in terms of the question that was posed earlier, and juxtapose that with the work that we are doing, and we are contributing to reignite the excitement on exploration, as it were. So as a Science Council, we are the custodian of all geoscientific information, both on and offshore. So we collect geoscientific data, primarily ourselves as the Council for Geoscience. And over the years, our forebearers have mapped the entire country at a scale of 1 in a million, as well as a scale of 1 in 250,000. And they've passed the baton to us to now increase the scale of mapping. And we had started a program of mapping at a scale of 1 in 50,000 some 5 years ago. At that time, we had a national coverage of around 3% at that scale. And I'm proud to share with participants that today, 5 years later, we are marginally above 10% coverage. And so we are making progress. And we think that it is this progress that will contribute towards the topic at hand today. And we'll get into more details of what it is that we do as the Council for Geoscience. Of course, we don't exist only in respect of the mineral development industry. Geology has various applications. Of course, it has applications in minerals and energy, but it also has applications in groundwater resources, in ground stability. What we are experiencing in the Teguini now finds expression in some of the applications of geosciences in assessing the ground stability before infrastructure development is considered. And it also has applications in environmental applications as well as innovation. And we've extended our mandate a little bit to also support our foreign policy predisposition, as it were. We see ourselves as an instrument of supporting foreign policy to the extent that our country has relations with other countries as a member of the global society. Now, in the past 110 years of existence, and this will be the key focus of our celebration of 110 years this year, we'll be looking and packaging and engaging with the geoscience community and other members of society to share with society the contribution of geosciences broadly to human development. We will be partnering with universities, both here in South Africa and overseas. We are calling for partnerships with the private sector to come and share the value of geosciences in their daily work. We'll be bringing other members of society, municipalities and other members of society, as it were, who are interested in the role that geosciences plays in societal development. Many of the cities that we have established today, and they have sustained the many years of existence, is primarily because their selection based on the preliminary geotechnical assessments that are done not only by the Council for Geosciences, but within the profession, and the continuous monitoring of the ground in those areas. The mines, we had become a mining economy, and I want to argue that we are still a mining economy. If post-COVID recovery is anything to go by, I hope South Africans now, more than before, appreciate the importance of mining to our economy. It may look like a very small picture, figure of 8%, but if you remove that 8% from the economy, you may begin to appreciate the importance of mining. And it is for this reason that we are excited about webinars like this, so that we can bring South Africans on board about the importance and exciting possibilities that lie ahead when we work as partners in the manner that we are building partnership with our critical stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Musa, and what a great introduction. And I know This is perhaps somewhat of a controversial topic in terms of where exploration in South Africa is at the moment, but I think with my three fantastic experts and who are none strangers to the mining industry, we're going to talk about solutions and the way forward that will promote positive exploration in this country. So without further ado, I would like to bring Errol into our conversation. And Errol, if you want to give an overview to our audience about your opinions and feelings on where exploration in South Africa currently is at the moment.
Hi, Laura, and hi to the fellow panelists. Yeah, look, exploration is actually finding a rebirth in South Africa at the moment. There are a number of junior explorers starting to grow, and we've just seen this fantastic video of Ivanhoe and what they've done in the DRC. But you know, they're doing some very interesting work in the bushveld, and on the back of what they did, there's other companies that are having a lot of exploration success in the bushveld. There's this misunderstanding of South Africa that people think that South Africa is overexplored. The fact is, yes, there are magnificent ore bodies that outcrop on surface and that were discovered and are still being mined. But we haven't started scratching the subsurface geology, and that's where the opportunity lies. You know, if you look at the growth of Western Australia's mining sector, that all came from applying modern technology to find obscured ore bodies that are under sand, under calcrete, under laterite, things that don't outcrop on surface or have a very small little signature on surface, and it's down dip with it, they turn into magnificent big ore bodies. And that's where the opportunity lies in South Africa. Do geologists recognize that opportunity? Hell yes, absolutely we do. You ask any geologist and they'll tell you that South Africa's got some of the best underexplored geology in the world. So why isn't it happening? And I think we all know the answer to that as well. Our own minister admits it, is we've gone through probably 2 or 3 decades of actually moving backwards in a regulatory environment that is just not user-friendly for explorers and geologists. How can we work together to make it happen? You know, our company Orion has just gone through an interesting sort of groundbreaking partnership with the Council for Geoscience, with Moose's gang, in one of the first and the oldest mining districts in South Africa, out at Okip. It's the first place where the Nama people mined copper, and we're taking the copper that they mined and smelted down to the castle it wasn't even a castle at that stage, in Cape Town. And as a result, Simon van der Stel went up to Okip and did the first European digging for copper there in the 1660s. And there's been digging ever since. But it's had no modern exploration in the last 4 to 5 decades. And that's where the opportunity lies. And we've shown that by using modern technology, things like the SkyTem airborne survey that we worked on, a transfer of information between ourselves and the Council for Geoscience, we've already discovered the first new sulfide ore body in that district that's been drilled in the last 40 years. There's a lot more to come like that. There's a lot of huge opportunity, but we need a regulatory framework that can make it happen. And there's all this talk about a mining cadastre and the DMRE having to step up. You know, the mining cadastre is simply a management tool. It's a user-friendly, transparent management tool so that everybody can see what's going on, and it builds a trust relationship. And we all know that we've had a challenge in our DMRE in South Africa over the last couple of decades, and there were a lot of things that didn't quite go according to the way that they should have gone, and there's data that's lost. There were mining titles and prospecting titles that ended up in the hands of people that possibly shouldn't have had them and didn't have the capability to do anything with them, or didn't have the intention to do anything meaningful with them. So there's all sorts of nefarious ways of getting ground in South Africa. If the mining cadastre was in place, that wouldn't happen. What we've got to do is we've got to undo that, and we've got to get a position where people are prepared to take the risk of greenfields exploration, because to discover a large-scale base metal mine in South Africa or anywhere in the world, and South Africa is no different to anywhere else in the world, is generally a 15 to 25-year time frame from the time of discovery to the time of development. Not every mine is going to be a Kamoa that you break the ground within 6 years of discovery. But even that, the greatest mine discovered for the last many decades, that shows you it took 6 years. Our prospecting rights, the first phase is 5 years. It'll probably take you 2.5 years of that first 5 years to get a water right so that you can drill the first hole, and to get a land access permission and all of your approvals in place so that you can drill the first hole. So there's a lot of impediments that we need to get out the way. The explorers are here, the investors will come, because we do have some of the best geology in the world.
Thanks, Errol. Great to hear that. Definitely you have an optimistic view, and the work that you're doing as part of Orion is testimony to that. But no doubt that regulatory environment needs some work. Grant, I think you're a great representative as part of the Minerals Council, particularly with regards to your position as for juniors and the emerging miners desk. So I think you are quite well and ready put to talk about how the junior market in South Africa feels about exploration. What would their voice be, Grant? What are they saying about where exploration in South Africa actually is at the moment?
Let me start off by saying I agree with Moose's comments that we're still a mining industry primarily. It's our biggest earner of foreign revenue. And I also admire Errol's optimism, and Errol doesn't see obstacles, he just sees opportunities. And we need more Orion Minerals in this country to come in and to break down these barriers. Okay, just to answer your question, I'll start off by the Minerals Council. We have 79 members. We obviously an employer body. And of the 79 members, 38 are juniors. And we've got a couple of companies in the pipeline. So we're fast approaching 50% of the membership of the Minerals Council will be juniors. However, in South Africa, the juniors are primarily smaller producers or mid-tier producers, although we do have explorer developers. They're in a minority. I'd say probably between 20 to 30% of our membership are in that category. So the net result is that our exploration, the culture of exploration companies in South Africa, as exists in Canada and Australia, it doesn't exist in South Africa. We've really missed out on that whole sort of strata of our industry. Our industry is structured with large multinational companies and then small mines, quarries and that type of thing. We don't really have these specialist exploration companies as Canada and Australia has. And I mean, if we just look at the stock exchanges, I mean, there's a few hundred exploration companies in the Toronto Stock Exchange. We have less than 10 in South Africa. So we've really got to build this sector up. And it's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of coordination between the social partners, between the DMRE, the Minerals Council, the Council for Geosciences, and then other stakeholders. A concerted effort. Errol's already touched on the key part of the problem, and it's the administration of prospecting rights. 2 years ago or a year ago, the Minerals Council Economics Department did a survey with our membership. I think the sample was about 23 companies, and the question asked was, how many exploration rights do you have in the pipeline? And then what is the size of the potential project? And they did a calculation. The calculation was that there's 40 billion rand locked up in potential expenditure on exploration in South Africa because of the inefficiency and the poor administration of exploration rights by the DMRE. And it goes back, if you take it back a step, it goes back to having a proper mining cadastre. So at the center of all of this, we've got to get that right. That is the single most important thing. And then linked to that would be a tax incentive system to attract investors, because investment is very high risk. So just to go back to answer the question, if we get these things right, the world's our oyster. It will take off. We've got fantastic mineralogy in this country, particularly for 4IR minerals, technology. I was just thinking about it, the 19th century, the rush was diamonds and gold. This century, it's going to be on this new technology. And we are so well positioned in South Africa to do that. The disappointing news at the moment is that currently the amount of global exploration dollars that we're attracting into South Africa, it's less than 1%. I think these figures are out there in the public domain. But the more depressing statistic is that South Africa is no longer the favored destination. The money is going north of Africa. I think we've dropped to number 4. The DRC, Burkina Faso is attracting more exploration dollars than South Africa. So we've got to get it right. But I think the release of the exploration plan is a very, very good step in the right direction. And, I'm wearing a Minerals Council hat. I can't make specific comments, but in broad terms, I think all the right ingredients are in there. We've just got to get it. We've just got to apply it, and we've got to actually get it going. And I think if we've got the will, we can do it. That's my opening comment. I know I've said quite a lot, but there's a lot to talk about.
Indeed, Grant, thank you. Clearly, mineralization in South Africa is not the reason why exploration is suffering. As both Errol and Grant have now pointed out, there's some regulatory conditions that we need to really put in the spotlight and deal with. Morsa, do you agree with your other two panelists, and what would your response be to some of the remarks that they've made thus far?
Laura, this panel is a panel that I have been working with for many, many years. So we are generally in agreement with a number of things. The only thing that sometimes I think that South African companies get a little bit spoiled. They like complaining and they want government this and government that. I think that entrepreneurs see opportunities where there seems to be challenges, leverage those opportunities. They go in the middle of Afghanistan where there's war and they do exploration there. Kamoa was not found in a country where there is a perfect regulatory system. And today it is the largest mine in the world. I don't think that the emphasis should be on what is not in place. I think our conversation should be, the starting point should be, is the mineralization okay? And if it is, I accept that if anyone was to invest any money into any system, into any country, you want a reasonable sense of assurance that you would get your returns. And if there is anyone in this panel or anywhere participating who can say that in South Africa you will not get your returns, I'll be very surprised. We have a court system that is second to none, a judicial system that is next to none. If you are aggrieved by what I do or what the minister does or any official does, you can exercise your constitutional right. And we know that our judges have been standing on the right side of the law as they should. So I'm generally in agreement, but I'm saying that we must also just not miss opportunities while we're standing up on top of the roof and complaining about what is not in place. This is the time to take full opportunity. I think the demand for materials, with the changing debate in the energy policy and the choices that we make as the world, underpinning all of that is a materials intensive demand trajectory that is coming. It requires that we act today so that we are ready when nations of the world are fulfilling that commitment for new sources of energy that are largely materials intensive. As it is, the industry that Mr. Smart is in of copper, it is projected that there's going to be major copper shortages in the next 20, 30 years. And that we will not be able to meet our renewable energy targets with the kinds of mines and the production of copper that we have today. We will need to open massive, at least 10 A-rated copper mines in the world in the next 5 years, which is impossible in order to meet that shift to the renewable energy sources. But how are we going to do that? The Northern Cape is the right address for exploration. Let us explorers get our boots on the ground, make discoveries, and in the process do the talking and fixing the other things. I don't think that we should sit and complain first and wait for a perfect environment for us to go and do exploration. I think let's do exploration. We are late already. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Musa. Look, I think the timing of this session is really relevant at the moment on the back of two pieces of collateral or documentation that have been released into markets that I want to talk about a little bit more. The first is that ranking of mining jurisdictions in the world that is released by the Fraser Institute. And Grant, I'm going to pose this question to you, and Errol, you are more than welcome to weigh in on this. Grant, the Fraser Institute ranking for South Africa was actually really poor in 2021. In fact, it was the worst since 2009, and we've ranked just behind or just in front of the DRC and Zimbabwe. And my understanding is that it's the lack of exploration that has affected our ranking. What is your opinion around this specific point, Grant, that the perception out there is that, you know, South Africa is lacking in exploration to the point where a Fraser Institute ranking puts South Africa so far down on that list?
Yeah, you know, I hear what Musa said, you know, and I don't want to appear the sort of prophet of doom, you know, and I mean, you look at the DRC, it's also lowly ranked, but it's also attracting investment. But if you look at a country that is ranked very high, that's Botswana. I think they ranked number 11. I think we were ranked number 60. Why is Botswana so highly ranked and we aren't? And, you know, it goes back to policy stability. Botswana has had the same legislation since 1999. And their system works. People who are going to invest there in exploration know how the system works. They know what they've got to do. They've got to go through a series of steps. The administration is fairly efficient, and therefore it's regarded as a very good destination. You know, in South Africa, we've got to get this stabilized. And I know that it's not going to happen overnight. And I know people like Musa are behind that stabilization, you know, to make sure that we've got a policy environment that when people come in, they know what they're investing into, they know what they've got to do, they know the steps. It's got to be clear, and then it's got to be set. And the issue about mining and exploration is it's very long term. It's very, very long term. So the set of rules today has got to be the same in 15 years' time. You know, you might be able to modify here and there, but it's got to be basically the same. The big risk is if you start introducing a lot of changes. So we've got to get that together. And the only way we can get that together is collaboration. You know, we've got to work together. We've got to pull together. The mining industry can't get exploration on its own. The government and the DMRE can't get exploration on its own. Geosciences can't get exploration on their own. We've got to work together. And I think, you know, with the release of that exploration plan, I think there's consensus, and I think we could do it, you know. So this is the key reason why we're so lowly ranked. We've got to get that policy part right. That would be my opinion. There are other issues, of course, but I think that's the key one.
Thanks so much, Grant. You know, Errol, the Minerals Council did put out a statement about South Africa's ranking with the Fraser Institute, and some of the other reasons they listed were some of the reasons we actually put in our poll results. You know, the necessity to reduce the backlog of prospecting rights applications and mineral rights transfers. And then also one of the other options, you know, the outdated cadastral system that we have. Do you think these are all contributing to the poor ranking that South Africa got in 2021?
Yeah, Laura, absolutely that's the case. You know, this Fraser Institute ranking, you know, Musa and in fact the minister very often criticize us as the mineral industry executive and say, why do we speak poorly about South Africa? And Musa also knows that I very often remind him and the minister that it's not us that are already here that are speaking poorly. Those that are here have found a way, as tough as what it is, to get through and make stuff happen. But the majority of people, of explorers and investors, the 99% of exploration dollars in the world are not coming here. And it's them that are voting in this Fraser Institute thing, and they're telling South Africa what we better know. You know, it's like dealing with alcoholism or drug abuse. You first got to admit that you've got a problem. And if you're not prepared to admit that you've got a problem, you will not solve the problem. And, you know, Musa and I've got a very good relationship on a lot of matters, but he also knows that him and I fight and beat each other up on a regular basis. He'll tell people about the tears that were coming out of his eyes the night before the exploration plan was released for the third time. You know, it's those things that we've got to get right. It's some of the detail which investors look to. Those people that are investing the 99% of money elsewhere in the world are saying, this is why you're not going to get it, is your policy documents are written in a way that they're incomprehensible, unfortunately. You know, our junior miners, Grant, you know, I'm the chairman of the junior miners on the Minerals Council, and Grant runs the desk. But most of our junior miners, the first comment was, why is this written in language that we can't even understand ourselves? You know, these are small little things that we've got to start paying attention to, because the investors of the world are voting. We all know that the geology is great. Technology we can do. We can do so many things, but we've got to stop making it so damn difficult. Because I don't want to spend my time in legal challenges using our fantastic legal system and all the years and clogging up the courts and all of that. I want to spend my time and my investors' money finding discoveries. And I want to do that as quickly as and efficiently as possible. And things like this cadastre that we speak about, this holy grail that everybody's been speaking about for 3 years. Musa knows. We sat and we agreed 3 years ago in a room in Pretoria at late afternoon on a Sunday afternoon after 2 hours, 2 days of hard negotiation, that the first focus has to be a workable mining cadastre. Why to this date have we still not got what even is the framework of what this cadastre is going to look like? We even got the minerals industry to agree to fund it and provide services. And I believe that if we'd started that route 2 years ago, when we'd agreed what was necessary, today we would almost be a functional cadastre in place. And then our minister wouldn't be having sleepless nights. And we wouldn't have the CETA, the State Information Technology Group, trying to reinvent a wheel. Man, this wheel's been invented multiple times around the world and applied successfully. Yes, we can improve it afterwards, but let's just get something in place that works. And people have proved it. It's available. We could have got so much further. We're still talking about what we're going to talk about. Let's start applying and making it happen.
Absolutely. Errol, Grant, you're both really hitting the nail on the head there, I think quite strongly, which is really what the point of this panel is about. But Errol, you touched on that exploration strategy that the DMRE released, I think just last week. Mosa, do you want to share your thoughts around that exploration strategy from the Council for Geosciences perspective? And maybe that strategy addresses some of the challenges that we've been discussing this morning.
Yeah, Laura, look, that strategy document, it highlights every one of the key highlight issues that as an industry we've been putting there. So congratulations for that. It's there. I think some of the vocabulary used may have softened some of the issues more than they should have been softened, but we all know it's a policy document, it's something to work with. So at least we've got a framework now to start building on. And we know the birthing pains that we've gone through to get this document out. Musa more than most, because he held a pen on a lot of that. And he got beaten up by Grant and I on a regular basis for a long time to try and get it out. We've been nagging the minister to get it out. Well, it's finally out. Now we've got something to work with. Could it have been better? Hell yeah. I think that there's a lot of words that could be better. I'm still waiting for the report back from the team of lawyers that have to read it and understand it and tell me if there's something in there that I'm missing. But yes, I think the basics are there. There's something to start working on. But as I said, you know, if you read that document, you can tell that it was actually drafted more than 2 years ago. Many of the dates that are in there show that it was drafted 2 years ago. It refers to the Fraser Institute survey that has just been released, and it's 2-year-old Fraser Institute survey results. So that just is an indicator of we going too slow. As an industry, we want to join hands with the DMRE and with the Council for Geoscience and all our regulators, the environmental authorities, the Department of Water. We want to find a way to make this all happen a lot quicker. Because if we don't, I'll tell you what, Musa's optimism is fantastic. But unless we, you know, it's all fine and well wanting to rechannel work from the existing miners back into exploration. And that's fantastic. I think it's laudable. How we manage it needs to be worked out and all that. But we've got to attract foreign direct investment in immediately. We've got to get money, dollars, pounds, euros flowing into South Africa and being spent in South Africa. You know, unlike mining, where a whole lot happens and there's long-term investment, and then suddenly people are making money and they're paying dividends, and maybe the dividends are flowing out of the country. With exploration, you take ground, you raise money, most of that money comes from offshore. You know, we've probably been one of the more successful companies to raise exploration money in South Africa, but only 25% of our monies come from South Africa. Most of the money comes from offshore. To get that money flowing in and spent in South Africa is what we need to get happening. And we can't be talking about it this time next year. We've got to be implementing it this time next year.
Musa, I think it's only fair I give you a chance to respond to some of the things that Errol has said, particularly with regards to that exploration strategy plan that has been released by DMRE. And Musa, you're also welcome to talk a little bit more about any of the other initiatives the Council for Geoscience is doing to actually help and encourage that exploration in South Africa.
Thanks, Laura. I am always fascinated, and there's a phrase I learned recently, which I think applies generally to us South Africans, that says, don't agonize, organize. And for me, the exploration implementation plan represents a starting point for us as stakeholders, not agonizing, but organizing, to rechannel exploration down a new trajectory and a new path. I can tell you that in the past 3 months, I have had approaches from particularly Australian exploration companies of not less than 15. We had lost appetite of Australian companies for some time in South Africa. And I'm excited when I see them redirected this way. They're looking for information. They want to put their boots on the ground and do exploration with South Africa. They want to be back in South Africa en masse. And for me, I take such steps as indicating that there is absolutely a beginning of seeing that we thought for the longest of time was no longer there in South Africa. And I agree with Errol that you need both, not only foreign direct, you need both local as well as FDI investment in the sector. I think a combination is very important. And with these sort of conversations that one is having with, amongst others, the Australian exploration companies, I think it's a good sign that we have not been smoking our socks as stakeholders when we were putting together this document and taking it through to be supported by Cabinet. What I also do want to add about the perception surveys that yes, they have a profound effect on investment decisions. But you know, I looked at this survey that the Minerals Council released a statement about. There were 3,000 people who were approached. Less than 300 responded. I ask myself, what is in the minds of 2,700 people that did not respond? Is it fair for Errol to sit here and say that, oh, everything is bad in South Africa, not everybody is investing, when the results reflect less than 10% of those that were approached? Are they representative of the views of the investment community? And is the investment community homogeneous in its approach and its thinking towards investment in South Africa? So all that I'm asking is that we are sometimes our own enemies, in that we look at something that is negative and that's what we raise, that's what we focus on, and we say one or two things that's positive and we say a million things that are negative. But yes, we cannot ignore the concerns and legitimate concerns that are raised, even if it was by one person, because it is not necessarily in the numbers of people that the substantive issues are raised. We've got to have the maturity and the ability to evaluate that is raised, assess it, and even if it was one person, accept that these are areas of weaknesses and what are we going to do about it, and then address those issues. I accept that the document has taken long. It's the first time that I'm hearing that members are complaining about the language. I would want to, I am interested to hear what do they mean by the language. We will put it out in all official languages. We'll write it in Afrikaans, Errol, and Zulu, so that everybody understands it. And then hopefully by that time it is out in all languages. We can then begin to engage further on the real issues. But the key thing is that the minister is behind this document. The minister has tasked Grant, Errol, myself, and others to develop this document, and now it is our duty to implement this document. I know that there are things that are outside of our control as the panelists here, but I'm confident that as members of this panel, we have done all that we could, and we continue to do all that we can to make sure that we see through the implementation of the strategy. What matters most to me is that in the next year or 2 years, I want to look at how far have we come in attracting exploration in South Africa, number one. Number two, is how many, what is the health of the exploration pipeline, particularly of critical minerals, and how many of those in the exploration pipeline are graduating into the next phase of development. Now, if you ask me, I would say that we can talk until the cows come home. We will never agree on everything. And I don't know if talking about everything is of any use to anybody. What I think is important is how do we get ourselves to building that healthy pipeline of exploration, and not exploration for the sake of it, but for minerals that matter to humanity and development. And are we positioning South Africa as a mineralized country that has those minerals that the world needs today? Now, I want to put a man of a caliber of Errol Smart into a platform in Boston and New York to go and tell those investors that they better put their money here, because this is where the minerals that they have committed to in Paris are at. And if they meant their commitment in that protocol, they must demonstrate by investing in jurisdictions that have those minerals, have the experience, have been doing this for over 150 years. Where else do you want to be if you cannot be in a place where things have been done for over 150 years and the Minerals Council still stands today? After how many years, Grant? 130 years.
I think it's 150, yeah.
150 years
it was
of existence.
1884, I think. So
there you are.
Yeah, it's about close to 150, yeah.
If we have changed policies from apartheid to democracy, and you are still here and you are still strong, I think we can do better in the language that we have and the issues that we focus on that position South Africa as an investment destination that will change the people, the lives of the people of South Africa, that will strengthen our fiscals, that will give the investors their returns. That will be a win-win-win solution for all that matter. And that, to me, is the approach that I think will help this country going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mosa. I really enjoyed that response. And one of the things you touched on quite strongly towards the end there was that critical minerals. And I'd like to explore that, particularly because a member of our audience has put their name out there. So Grant, Karel Labuschagne is talking about where the future of mining in South Africa is going with regards to exploration, particularly in light of critical minerals. So what critical minerals do we have, Grant, and do you think this might be some of the saving grace that will help lift exploration in South Africa?
Well, you know, I'm not a geologist like Errol, but having read up on this, the key ones you've got really is platinum, copper, zinc, manganese. Some of those are found in the Northern Cape. There are others as well, and there's also the rare earth minerals, which we've got. The interesting thing is, you know, the new 4IR technologies, not only they're applied in the sort of world of computers, but it's also been applied in the world of mining. We've got a big project in the Minerals Council called Modernization, and it's looking at sort of modernizing the industry and modernizing exploration. You know, all the new technologies, some of them are incredible. I mean, you know, for example, there's a sort of something being developed by the mining precinct, which looks a bit like an iPad, and you take it into the stope, and it tells you all the information you need to know in the stope, but it also allows you to order equipment and resources at the point of production. Now, you just look at that one piece of technology, how that is saving or making the mining industry much more efficient, because you don't have to go through all these layers and go through departments and order things. So, you know, the world of new technology in mining is moving very, very fast. I've just given you one example. There's, you know, as I said, the Mandela precinct is a place where all that's been developed. In fact, we ran a webinar on it for our junior miners, and it's particularly relevant for the junior mining sector because they can, the cost structures come down with this new technology. So it's a very exciting world, and it's as I said, it's going to be our next wave in this country. It's going to be this technology rush. It's not the gold or diamond rush. It's going to be the technology rush. But again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning, and I know I'm belaboring the point, Musa, but we need the cadastre and we need a tax incentive system for exploration. If you're a foreign investor, you're sitting on the outside, you need information to invest. And if you've got a cadastre, you can go in there on your phone or your iPad or your computer, and you can see what's available. You can see who's doing what. You can look at some of the historical data on mineralogy, etc., and that gives you a very informed position to invest. This is part of the problem, is that we opaque. People have got to come here to have a look. They can't actually sit in New York or in Toronto or whatever and see what's going on. So that's so important from an investment point of view. And then the second thing, and I know it's a little bit off the topic, but in 2020, we did a huge amount of work on flow-through shares for South Africa. We spent better part of a year working with a group of tax experts. I mean, they're top law firms in the country, FASC and ENS, all their tax advisors. We had a group of economists, and we put together a proposal which went to National Treasury. It wasn't just an idea, it was a how-to. It was a how to do it. And we haven't as yet had a response. And I feel, and it's a little bit of a pet hobby horse, but I feel, and I mean, the whole Canadian industry, the reason why it's done so well is because the exploration sector has these tax incentives, and it's primarily through the flow-through share system. And it really needs to, I feel, we really need to bring it into South Africa, and it is part of the exploration plan. So, yeah, I know I've went straight off the point a bit, but new minerals, absolutely. New technology, absolutely. Mining cadastre system, absolutely.
Thanks, Grant. And I am going to pull those poll results up in a little while, because I think it's very interesting in terms of what we've been saying and what the audience are thinking. But before we get there, I just want to touch on one or two more audience questions. Errol, an interesting one, and one that I haven't actually really given much thought to myself. Are we looking at the impact of climate change on exploration potential? What would you say to that?
Well, I think very much so, and it's exactly about this discussion of the new forward-facing minerals. What's driving the new appetite for certain minerals is very much climate change and the change of our environment and the impact on humankind. So this whole drive for copper that Musa is speaking about, it's driven by electrification, the desperate need for electrification and renewable energy and sustainable energy sources. So that's why people are going after copper. But they're not only going after copper for its metal, they're going after copper for its sulfates and its salts, which are used in the battery industry. They're going after nickel, not for nickel metal, they're going after nickel salts. They're going after cobalt byproducts as salts and as battery quality minerals. Even the old metals, the old minerals that have been mined for a long time, and South Africa's on the cusp of being the world's biggest zinc producer. But you know where the big value of zinc is? It's not just in galvanizing, it's in this. The stuff that's made us all survive for the last 2 years. Zinc that we're drinking. This zinc in this bottle is selling for probably 50 to 100 times the price of zinc metal that's contained in it. That's where the future of mining is going. So it's not just about we can go out there and find gold and platinum like our predecessors have done. We've got to be looking at what are the future-facing metals? What are these rare earth elements that are going to be required in 5 years? Grant said it, whole industry is morphing so fast that geologists have got a critical part to play, because we've got to find the stuff and make it available in mined form, and then be working with our metallurgical colleagues because I think our metallurgical colleagues need to go hand in hand with geologists now, because we are trying to produce something new. We're not just trying to do it the old way, using the old dirty furnaces and smelting it and producing a lump of steel that gets imported somewhere. Yeah, in South Africa, we should be looking at the forward-facing metals, the metal carbonyls, the metal salts, these things that sell for 10 times the value of a smelted metal.
Thank you, Errol. I love that zinc bottle addition there to that question. That was great. So we have about 8 minutes left, gentlemen. So I'm going to try and bring in one, maybe two more questions, and then we're going to end with wrapping up with those poll results. And I'll give you each just a minute to give your views on what those poll results are. So also a question from the audience for yourself, and they would like to know how much progress has been made with regards to offshore mapping.
Offshore, I don't know how much the participants know of the operations Pakisa Blue Economy. I think it was started around 2014 at the time. And we were at the time looking at our own onshore mapping and how far we had not gone at the right scale. In addition to what Grant was saying with the flow through shares and cadastral system and so on, what they haven't told you is that both Canada and Australia are mapped at 1 in 50,000 scale. So they've invested in geosciences. And so the expenditure in exploration that you see is a direct consequence of the state having deliberately invested in mapping in geosciences, first and foremost. And then add layer of a cadastral system, add a layer of other fiscal instruments like FTS and so on. But coming back to the offshore, so we had not mapped much at all as a country offshore. And we had now bought a small research vessel called the RV Nkosi. And we have partnered with the Navy, the South African Navy. Unfortunately, our approach to the Navy was at the time when they were retiring the SAS Protea, but they are acquiring a new vessel. And at the time the new vessel arrives, we will then be able to deploy that partnership fully. But in the interim, they are availing a vessel, a small motor boat vessel for us in the next 3 months or so. We are also partnering with the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Environment, with the Cape Agalas vessel, so that when it's moving along the oceans and doing all sorts of research that they do, we would have our instruments collecting the data. That too hasn't taken off yet. So our ocean is not small. You may be aware that we have also submitted an application to the United Nations to increase our extended economic zone horizon, which may effectively double the size of the country if and when granted. So when we permute the progress we have made in the past 18 months, only on the offshore, we are still at 0.03%. And so, but once the framework of cooperation with other organs of state that has vessels, what we did not want to do is to go to Treasury and say, give us so many billions so that we buy our own vessel. We thought, let's leverage existing vessels and all the other organs of state that have the vessels, have really been excited about this partnership. And I think this will take off in the next 2-3 years once these agreements are fully deployed, and our coverage should increase by at least 1 or 2% coverage offshore per annum going forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Musa. So just a few minutes left, and as I promised, I'm going to bring those poll results up. I'm going to ask each of my panelists for just 30 seconds, maybe a minute at most, to comment on that. And here we go. Interestingly enough, very few people think that South Africa is a mature mining industry, so we can take that option off the table. But the two biggest percentages voted on two of the main points that we offered was that South Africa needs a modern cadastral system and that we need new technologies to discover ore bodies. So Errol, if I can ask you just in 30 seconds to a minute, what are your thoughts on these poll results? Do you agree? Let's wrap it up looking at these numbers. Okay.
My apologies. So, Musa, congratulations on getting us to the point that we have with a workable document with an exploration master plan. Secondly, a cadastre is a management tool. I don't think we can manage without the cadastre, and it removes that opaque layer. So that is key. But at the end of the day, the regulations have to be workable. I think if there's transparency, the regulations that are in place can be workable with some modification.
Super. Errol, thank you very much. Grant, your opinion on those poll results and a closing note?
Yeah, well, obviously I agree, because the 2 points I read was cadastre and technology. But just going back to the exploration plan and really a comment to Musa, yeah, well done, it's out. And I think, you know, we need to concentrate on what we agree on and what we can do as a starting point. And the small points of disagreement we can deal with, but let's really, the broad brush strokes are there, and let's really work on getting it implemented, you know, and that's going to be the big challenge. And we do agree on most of the points, so let's work with that.
Grant, thank you very much. And Musa, to close our session and our panel discussion on exploration, in a minute, please, your final closing.
Oh, yeah. Certainly, I'll try and do it in less. Laura, this has been fantastic. I think you have a knowledgeable panel here, participants that understand the issues. And I want to challenge you to reconvene this panel as soon as possible for the Council for Geoscience to present the first set of its findings in a particular area that will be disclosed on the day as part of our program to resuscitate exploration. Because as the Council, we are going to lead in the implementation and driving positivity and inviting South Africans to be excited and to rally around exploration as the lifeblood of our economy and our livelihood for the next 300 years plus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you again to Errol, to Grant, to Musa for your time and for your transparency in talking about an area of mining in South Africa specifically that is so important. Your insights have been really invaluable. Again, thank you so much for your time. It's been really appreciated. And without further ado, we have a lot more in our session to come. So I'm going to hand back over to our program director, who's going to take us through to the next steps of our session this morning.
Thank you, Laura. That was a very insightful discussion there coming from our exploration experts, speaking on the state of exploration in South Africa. We've heard Musa there standing on his ground, saying that South Africa is still a mining economy. Errol shared his optimistic view there, saying that investors will indeed come. And speaking on behalf of juniors, Grant expressed his concern with SA structures, comparing them to our counterparts in Australia and Canada, saying that we've got to collaborate in building this sector up. Musa, Errol, and Grant, thank you for joining us. Up next, we celebrate mining elites in Africa 2022 runner-up in the exploration category. Now, this will be in a video form. Ladies and gentlemen, Luke Alexandra, CEO of Newcore Gold.
Good day. I hope you've enjoyed our program thus far. Now I'm joined by Luke Alexander, President and CEO of Newcore Gold, runners-up in the exploration category in our Mining in Elites 2022 edition. Luke, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Luke, let's start by you telling us about the company. Who is Newcore Gold?
Newcore Gold has the Enchi project in Ghana. It's a district scale exploration project on one of two prolific gold belts that runs through Ghana. We currently sit at about 1.4 million ounces of inferred resource, so a very robust resource for us to be building off of. We're in the midst of a 90,000 meter drill program, which is the largest ever drill program on our Enchi project. And lastly, the company is fundamentally underpinned by a PEA that we put out in 2021, which outlined very robust economics.
Now, Luke, you were awarded our runner-up status in our exploration category in Elites. Why do you feel that our advisory board felt that the company deserved that acknowledgement?
I think there's a number of things that the advisory board probably saw with our Enchi project and the company as a whole. We're led by a very strong management team with a proven track record of making shareholders money. We are in Ghana, which is Africa's largest gold producer. So we've got great kind of infrastructure in country, great mining services companies, and a very well aligned government. And also, if you look at our Enchi project and some of the neighbors along trend from us, you can see that there's a number of 5 million ounce plus resources along trend from our Enchi project. It's also a district scale project, 216 square kilometers in size. We've identified 25 targets on the project, of which our current resource only sits on 4 of those 25 and remains completely open along strike and at depth. So I think they recognized the district scale opportunity that our Enchi project presents and is fundamentally underpinned by very robust economics, which were outlined in that PEA in 2021.
Now, Luke, before we go on to find out more about Enchi itself, can you tell us what is your exploration background?
My exploration background, I guess, is working with exploration companies. I come from the investment banking finance side of the business, spent 15 years working with ASX, TSX, London listed companies with different mining projects around the world, advising them on capital raises. But one of the key things with our Enchi project is we have an extremely strong exploration team led by Greg Smith, our VP exploration. Greg's got over 30 years, 30 years of exploration experience. He's worked in these greenstone hosted deposits around the world. He's been working on our Enchi project for the last 10 years. And then our team in country has a huge amount of exploration experience. In country, it's led by Dan Wilson. He's our country manager. He's worked on the Enchi project on and off for the past 25 years. He's worked in a number of different countries around Africa. And then the team that Greg and Dan have built have experience up and down the entire Sefwi Bibiani belt, including at Chirano, Bibiani, at Ahafo, and have also worked at another number of other projects around Africa. So all of that exploration experience sits within the company, and that's one of the key things that's driving it forward, and one of the reasons we've been so successful with the exploration that we've been doing.
That's great to hear. So can you unpack the latest developments on Enchi? Because I understand that there's been some really positive news that's come out in the last month or so.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we currently sit on a 1.4 million ounce inferred resource. Really strong PEA fundamentally underpins the company. But what our focus has been is on exploration. And we've really taken a multi-pronged approach on that exploration. We've been looking to expand the oxides near surface at all of our existing resource areas. And we've been stepping out and building the size of the mineralized footprint at all of those areas. Secondly, we've gone back to previously drill tested areas that haven't been drilled in a number of years, made more discoveries at those areas with the goal of adding them to our 1.4 million ounces. And then thirdly, we've been looking to make new discoveries. This year in 2022, we've announced 3 new discoveries, and that's something that we wanted to really accomplish as part of this program to show the growth potential at our Enchi project. So new discoveries. And then lastly, we've been, for the first time ever, starting to drill deeper on the project, below 150 meters. This is something we're very excited about and been having a lot of success. One of the things you'll see with the deposits along the Sefwi-Bibiani belt from us is that where they start to increase in grade and grow in size is as you start to find the feeder zones on these projects. And if you look at some of the results that we've been releasing over the last year, we feel that we've started to identify where some of these feeder zones sit on our Enchi project, which is something that we're very excited about. And also, I think something that the advisory board and part of the reason we've received this award is because they recognize that we've started to identify some of this high grade at our project as well.
That's interesting to know. I'm sure there's going to be good things coming out of Enchi in the near future. Finally, Luke, what advice would you give to other explorers in terms of excelling at this stage of their project?
I think there's, a few key things that you need. I mean, having strong financial backing is something that's very important. I mean, you can have the best project in the world, but if you don't have the money to move it forward, that becomes a real challenge. For us at Newcore, we're very fortunate that we've got very strong institutional backing. We're currently owned 40% by deep-pocketed, long-term mining and precious metals investors. Being in a good jurisdiction is another key thing. We've got very strong support from the government to be pushing our project forward. And then also, I think we've touched on it a little bit as I highlighted the exploration team, but having a good team to move the project forward is something that's also critical in terms of making the most of the dollars that are spent on the project. So those would be 3 of the things that I would mention.
Great stuff. Luke Alexander, President and CEO of Newcore Gold, thank you for your time today and good luck to the company in its future endeavors.
Thank you very much, Gerard.
Thank you, Luke, and congratulations on the progressive work on the Enchi project. I'd now like to hand back to Laura, who will be introducing 3 exploration tech leaders who will showcase their technologies for the exploration field. Laura?
Thanks so much, Lingiri, and I'm really glad to introduce this portion of our digital event this morning because as it was highlighted in our panel discussion not so long ago, the real importance that technology can bring to promoting exploration. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my first tech presenter, Colm Murphy. Colm is the Chief Geoscientist for Bell Geospace and will spend the next 10 minutes talking about their interesting technology for the exploration field. Colm, over to you. Thanks so much.
Yes. Good morning, and I hope, yes, you can see my screen. What I'm going to talk about, and hello everyone, and good morning to you all. Welcome to a talk. It's on FTG's future-facing role, meeting the demands of the new mining cycle. I'm Colm Murphy, Chief Geoscientist with Bell Geospace. Today's brief talk will cover the role of FTG, that is full tensor gravity gradiometry, in what is now the start of a new mining cycle. This cycle is both exciting and challenging as we explore and exploit new reserves of metals needed to get our economies back on track in a post-pandemic world. Exploration, of course, is the bedrock of our endeavours, and FTG has a primary role to play in terms of not only identifying target geology, but also with upscaling our understanding of the geological complexity that hosts these targets. This is a chart that you're all very familiar with, is pointing the way forward as we crave and need to find all those key metals that will facilitate the energy transition. And that's a transition that is focused on the electrification of the world. And it's primarily focused on three primary energy sources: the wind and solar, nuclear and geothermal. Wind and solar is of much focus these days as the world strives to build big and better systems capable of delivery. Nuclear and geothermal has been around for a while and are now receiving renewed interest with new technologies to better exploit their offering and making their promise so much more efficient. Of course, the challenge of making these new sources work really comes down to the capture, storage and distribution of their promised energies. This brings on unique challenges in the sense that there is a need to explore and find large-scale deposits of key metals. Rare earths and platinum group elements are primary for the construction and rollout of efficient wind turbines and solar panels, but these not only need to be weather resistant, but offer a prolonged lifespan that they require erstwhile metals to make them work. Storage is key for the wind and solar due to the intermittent capture, so development of high functioning batteries is critical. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, etc. They're all used in the construction of batteries, both with the current and the new offerings we keep hearing about. And then there's uranium for what may see increased development of the nuclear. Distribution of these new energies is key, and it's no wonder we see the high copper prices these days. Wiring, cabling, and charge point stations are only a part of the infrastructure requirement that will need a whole-scale upgrade to energy distribution points around the world. So the challenge for finding these critical metals means we need to think about exploration. And at the start of any mining cycle, exploration usually starts with brownfield settings. This is both strategic and cost-effective. However, technologies that worked before may not be suited for finding reserves of the critical metals now under the spotlight. Similarly, reserves may be deeper or reside in more subtle geology. Such exploration therefore needs a rethink in terms of geological evaluation and identifying the correct play and technologies to tap into these resources. Once achieved, we can then equally apply such methods to the more greenfield settings. With all of this, geology, geophysics and geochemistry is now more critical than ever. The new cycle will be exploring for metals previously acknowledged and found, but perhaps not on the scale that is now required. Geophysical methods are fantastic at detecting and mapping geology, and when combined with geological reasoning, often lead to prolonged exploration success. One of the key technologies is full tensor gravity gradiometry, the FTG, and we will now take a look at its offering. FTG allows us to build what we call is a full spectrum or a broadband gravity data field. The technology measures the rate of change of gravity in all directions of the field as presented by the subsurface geological density contrasts. These multi-measurements of the field, that is the measured components, are processed simultaneously and output a stable, high signal to noise tensor and a conventional gravity product. The key strength with the FTG is a clear ability to identify density change, structural shape and contact information directly from the data in what is the highest resolution gravity product and offer to the industry. The schematic diagram helps us to visualize what is retrieved. The lower panels show three geological models and the upper panels their FTG response. The black and the red curves, that is the gravity and the TZZ, they identified a clear density change from low density fill to the high density dolerite. The curvature anomaly pattern shown in green is produced by combining the horizontal components and clearly relates to curvature from geology. We see this with the diatreme and the dolerite structures. Then the gradient is absolutely fantastic at mapping edges, but more interestingly, it directly maps fault contacts as shown by clear positive anomalous response. And we use these three primary elements in all of our interpretation workflows. So when looking then to think about what the FTG is, we identify the value proposition. We break it down into three principal achievements. The density change is tracked by looking at the TZZ, the vertical component with the conventional gravity. The structural shapes, looking at from the horizontal components, identify structures, and then we map the edges of features and key faults with the XZ and YZ components. From the density change, we identify lithologic change. From there, you easily infer whether you're looking at felsic versus mafic or sediment versus igneous and basement and heterogeneity. The structural shapes throw up a series of anomalous patterns that quickly get to grips and identify. You can interpret them as being intrusives or granites or weathered zones, or they're placer lakes or potholes in the subsurface. And then from the contact edges, we're looking at linear anomaly patterns, and we can relate them to dikes and again alteration zones and contact aureole information. And as we all know, the mineralization is predominantly found in each of these kind of structural settings, and so we have a clear technological advantage with the FTG to track that information. So where has FTG been acquired? The FTG as a technology has been around now for nearly 30 years. Also, Bell Geospace, we've been acquiring the data for 25 plus years. We own 4 instruments and 3 aircraft, and in each aircraft is kitted out with the FTG, a gravity, a magnetic, and a LiDAR technology. As you can see from the map, we've got quite extensive experience worldwide with over 500 surveys in 50 countries, yielding over 2 million line kilometers of production data. As an example, this is from a project in Eastern Africa, a small district scale project. Copper and nickel was the target. From the image on the left, we see it's a gravity field retrieved from the FTG, and on the right is the magnetics. And there's a wealth of information in here to assist the explorationists, the geologists, as they build their subsurface framework maps and identify the clarity. We can see that quite neatly from looking at the long linear positive gravity anomaly flanked by positive magnetic anomalies, telling us something about the subsurface geology. But then when we look at the FTG gravity, we see 2 positive anomalies, and there's a non-magnetic signature associated with them. So we're learning a lot about the subsurface geology to reduce any uncertainty in an exploration work program. On a more regional scale, this is from a project in Botswana with De Beers. This is the airship project that many of you may have remember. The gravity from the FTG is shown on the left is over a very large region, and we see a series of positive and negative anomalies identifying clear subsurface complexity. And then we strip away the gravity effect, and we can look at the impact from the tensor information that's recorded as shown on the right. The vast color complexity in many ways, yet there's some very detailed and informative geology to be seen. We see one such feature, which is a ring dike complex system in a syenite intrusive area, lots of clear structural pattern and significant change. Going a little bit to the south, we see a series of folded patterns identifying mapping the subsurface geology with great clarity, all the while helping to reduce uncertainty in an exploration context. How do we acquire it? This is the standard Basler BT-67. This is the standard aircraft for FTG acquisition. It's considered the most ideally. It's the low noise platform, very stable, helping us to have fantastic productivity. It's twin engine setup. It flies at about 100 meters above ground. It means that we can win long long duration in each daily sortie while we're acquiring data. It's very stable, yes. And so to help to surmise, and what I've hoping been able to share with you today is looking at we're very much in the midst of a new mining cycle. It's all about the energy transition and the need to find new metals and vast reserves of these metals. And of course, with that, we have to have a rethink about our approach to exploration in both the brown and greenfield settings. Do we ask the questions? Do we understand the geology? Do we even have the right technology to map that subsurface detail? Do we have the right kind of data? Is it at the right scale? And do we have it at the right time in our work programs? All the while, and advancing and refining and providing detailed, accurate play models, exploration models, and the like. FTG is one of those key technologies that has much to offer in this transition exploration phase. The technology has been around for over 25 years, and ourselves at Bell Geo have vast global reach. We've seen some examples here today, going from the province to the district to the prospect scale. FTG is the technology that allows you to connect the regional gravity network right down into a prospect scale detail, and it's allowing us to identify the knowledge gap, or to bridge that knowledge gap and get more detail and understanding about the detailed subsurface structure that allows us to track prospectivity across your survey area. From the tensor information, we get density, structure, and contact edges, and these are directly related to the key targeted geology in the subsurface. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'll hand it back to you, Laura. Thank you.
Colm, thank you so much for that presentation. And clearly that technology FTG that you're speaking about talks about and addresses some of those areas with regards to what exploration companies need to sort of encourage their field work out there in Africa and South Africa as well. So thank you, Colm, so much. I would like to introduce our next presentation. This will be delivered by Cameron Pfafferrot. Cameron is the Marketing Director of Rocket Mine. And Cameron, I'll hand it over to you. I can't wait to hear what your technology can do for the exploration industry.
Super, thanks so much, Laura. Okay, so I think just a quick introduction, just to add a little bit of credibility to the presentation that I'm sharing with you now. So Rocket Mine is part of a group entity that is called Delta Drone International, which has over 10 years or close on 10 years experience across the globe, currently ranked 4th drone service provider globally, and essentially first drone service provider in Africa. We've done work as far west as Mexico, as far east as Perth, as far north as France, and play quite heavily in the African territory. We have over 100 drones that we currently deploy, enterprise drones, across the globe, and we are listed on the ASX under the DLTI ticker. So in terms of our technology and the topic of exploration, in the world of RPAS or drones, we kind of liken it to an iceberg effect. On the surface, you'll note that there is an iceberg, and everybody believes, once they've got the hardware, they're able to execute the operation in terms of their exploration mission or the overall project. However, there's a lot beneath the surface that meets the eye, and insofar as exploration goes, we need to be looking at variables such as size of area, the mineral in question. The approach, for instance, with lithium would be very different to something like iron ore. The environment, wildlife considerations, the impact on the social, economic dimension, and then the showstoppers really would be around compliance, logistics, and insurances. If these are not aligned and stakeholders aren't correctly lobbied, for lack of a better word, the entire exploration can come to a grinding halt. And with most of these projects, obviously economic viability sits at the forefront, with the board initially on deciding which territories to embark on. A lot of entities believe that Africa is one sort of territory, when in fact each country has its own nuances, and the viability of each should be strongly considered before a foray into these. So in terms of the presentation that I'm sharing today, we are looking at a technology that is beginning to disrupt a lot of projects around LiDAR topographic surveys, which traditionally have been done by manned aviation. And no one solution is the unicorn or the ultimate go-to or the silver bullet. And so manned aviation has its place in terms of mapping larger territories. However, we're seeing a resurgence of LiDAR technology having its place in smaller areas, and not so much around multi-copter or multi-rotor systems, but fixed-wing drones. So in this case, we've got a gold mine that was looking to expand their operations in West Africa, in Ghana, and we used a fixed-wing drone to achieve this. You might be wondering what the relevance is of conducting a topographical survey of a potential new tailings area that you're looking to establish in a new area. And often a picture speaks 1,000 words, but a video does one better. So I'm sharing with you something that many of you would have seen, Brumadinho, Brazil, 2 years ago, a tailings facility that collapsed. In this instance, when you look at the visuals, obviously the financial implications that are direct as well as the indirect consequences from a reputational risk point of view are severe. For a small or medium-sized mining operation, it really does reduce confidence in investors, as well as government and other stakeholders for future growth, as well as the operation that the entity is looking to grow into. So in this case, 100 people, over 100 people had died, 200 people had been determined as missing. So that gives you a sense of the scale of why you would want to ensure that the area that you're embarking in needs to have had the right level of elevations determined pre-establishing one of these. The case study I'm presenting to you today, as I mentioned, is a gold mine that looked to expand about 100 miles northeast of Accra, capital of Ghana, Ghana being one of the gold capitals of Africa. And in this specific territory, we had a few key variables to consider. So the area, while on manned aviation may have seemed quite small, for a fixed wing drone at 6,500 hectares was a fairly large area. Ghana's got quite a unique composition in terms of its canopies and vegetation. So they have multiple layers of forestry to contend with. The drone has an IMU built in, and it does fly at about 100, 120 below or above surface. So it does achieve the same results as manned aviation would. However, considering the size of area, it needs to obviously fly for an extended amount of days, 40 degrees Celsius on average. If this needed to be better visualized for you versus that image that I've got over there, this is what that specific area would look like in Ghana. The system that we used is on the top left of the screen as a short visual. The benefit of this Trinity F90 platform that we used is that it allows versatility of payload on the nose of the aircraft. So you're able to put on RGB, thermal, and LiDAR sensor capability relative to the mission. In this case, all we wanted to do was penetrate through this dense forest area. Once we had done the survey, there are obviously a number of points that get rendered in the software with this yellow scan unit that are unclassified. So this represents all the colorized ground and non-ground points. Once we reduce those to ground points only, we can see the raw mesh rendered here. And once that's colorized to help us visualize the elevation levels, we can see where the risks can emerge in terms of where water flow would naturally gravitate towards if there was a tailings facility that had failed. So the ultimate objective of the client was to be able to determine areas that might be affected by a flood. So to simulate this and make sure that the mining operation would be safe and that communities that needed to be engaged could be and resettled if required, and to make sure certain areas weren't inhabited once this operation was put in place. You'll see the areas that are outlined in pink that were deemed as safe areas for communities to remain settled in, and the deeper blue veins that are running through the center, bottom left to top right, obviously not to be inhabited. Overall summary of the project was a 20 flight project over a 4-day period with an approximate flight time of 20 hours. As I've mentioned, we mapped 6,500 hectares with LiDAR, with the benefit of being able to deploy with a vertical takeoff and landing within minutes. 11 billion points were captured, with about a quarter of those being ground points only, with obviously through that level of canopy is quite impressive. And the overall project accuracy was at about 2.3 centimeters, which obviously the mine themselves were really happy with. So this brings the presentation to a close. Obviously from a Delta drone and rocket mine perspective, we run a number of these initiatives in agriculture, mining and security, and this was one in exploring the growth of a mine in a specific area. And as I say, the customer was very happy, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to get in touch with me.
Super. Cameron, thanks very much. Another great exploration technology, and it always demonstrates so perfectly when presented in the form of a case study. So really appreciated how you delivered that, and great for our exploration sector. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Laura.
And without further ado, last but definitely not least, I'd like to present or introduce our third tech presentation, our last tech presentation for the day. welcome Jamie from Schoor. Jamie is the CEO of Dwika Mining. Jamie, I look forward to your presentation.
Can you hear me now? It looks better.
All good, Jamie. Great.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for the opportunity. Hello to the panelists and listeners. It was great to kind of catch the beginning part of the panel as well with the team from Orion Minerals. As a caveat, we don't do as much exploration technology development as we'd like. Thought I'd quickly give a quick view of what Dwika is involved with and our interpretation of exploration. Yeah, it was an exciting opportunity to actually give it some thought, and certainly something we're going to be applying our minds to going forward. So Dwika Mining Services, very excited to share a little bit about what we do. We are the MinTech crew. You've heard a lot about AgTech, FinTech. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is being very passionate about mining technology and the positive impact that technology can happen and impact for our clients by augmenting human effort in the mining space. So if you have a problem and you're looking to solve it, we like to pride ourselves and think of ourselves as the solutions developers to answer that problem. Just a quick one on maybe just for those of you who haven't engaged with our brand and what it is that we do. A large part of what we do is help our clients adopt and adapt to an evolving technological change. And I think some of your panelists as well in the beginning part of this the panel were citing how technology is such an important consideration. And really the big thing around this is that the users constantly have to be abreast of these changes. And this support is where Dwika has kind of built its platform on, and ensuring that technological change can be supported during the term of the operation. The big thing that we've done successfully, I think, is also run around the world to make sure we've got the technology that answers these questions. So that means we also have to be very close to our client in understanding their needs, understanding their user requirements, and increasingly assisting them with ruggedized technology that can last the blast and last these in very cost-intensive arenas. We've traditionally been a business that's tongue-in-cheek around digging deeper to find the metrics that matter, underground mining technology platform, and passionate about finding end-to-end solutions that make sense. And one of the things that we were excited about asking to speak around exploration is that that journey starts much earlier than, say, the ventilation suite that we've kind of built the business from traditionally. But the reality and the kind of golden thread around exploration is that everyone needs to visualize their assets from the start. So I thought I'd give you my view on that and share a little bit about what our technology stack looks like. So we're human plus machine solutions advocates. A big part of what we do is around real-time data. So getting the right infrastructure and the right devices in place so that our clients can actually ensure that they have the right amount of data at the right time, at the right price point. Visualization, which we'll kind of focus on today, because I think that's probably the biggest common theme around exploration and using technology to unlock value. And then something we're migrating into as a business, which is probably gets a lot of attention because it's got the yellow dog and it's got drones that fly up and down, much like Cameron from the Rocket Mine stuff. I think you'll appreciate that the drones become the interesting part, but really the data is the most important. So having the right drones and payloads delivers the data that you need. And yeah, I was interested to hear that the success in Ghana, that highly vegetated landscape, is certainly somewhere that the LiDAR would be very useful. So yeah, looking forward to the panel discussion to see potentially some synergies and sharing some thoughts there. I thought maybe because I'm ending off, maybe just tongue in cheek and a little bit about how I interpreted the brief that Gerard challenged me with. You know, we had all these explorers running around the world where tech was relative. You know, their advancement of tech was jumping in a ship that's been built with the right kind of wood and having the right maps and the right sextants and, you know, navigating by the stars. Using their technology is relative to their challenges. And again, often trying to find minerals in places, you know, far abreast as the West Indies and the East and all those travel routes you can see by those kind of famous explorers. The thing that I kind of draw the analogy around was, you know, what does the modern day tech explorer look like? So in this exploration, I focused on the underground side of what we would term, you know, exploration, you know, tackling new workings, old developments. I'm currently in the Northern Cape in OKIP, so very aligned to Errol Smart's Orion Minerals investment, and currently looking at a couple of options here. But these tech explorers, as we've hashtagged it, are the new exploration or the new explorers of the digital mining world. And bottom left probably needs no introduction. We have Spot from Boston Dynamics, who we represent and proudly do so. The enterprise robot version is doing its paces, exploring all sorts of underground zones, and I'll touch on that. The other part, and we talked a little bit about LiDAR in the previous discussion, is around how do we deploy LiDAR technology to get a better visual or a picture of the underground workings so that we can update models, that we can visualize models on surface, that we can have a meeting of the minds around a boardroom table around what the actuals are from a reality capture package. And here the HoverMap ST, which we launched 2 months ago, is going to be a very formidable tool, because we can use that on drone, off drone, and I think the flexibility to use it on surface for, again, kind of like the applications talk about aerial LiDAR capture, as well as underground, represents, as one payload, represents a lot of value add. And in the bottom right, just a quick digital twin. It wouldn't be a presentation around technology if we didn't use the buzzword, but just a quick view of, a underground haulage or an area where we've flown a drone with the HoverMap, and again, a trajectory. And again, bringing back the theme of trajectories and maps and mapping, I thought that was quite a nice way to link the two, the legacy, the current, and the future, which links us to exploring new frontiers and how do we embrace the human plus machine solution. Tongue in cheek with the other yellow animal that helped us in mining, which was a pretty difficult place to find information, because not probably the best and proudest moment putting live birds in underground workings to literally be the canary. But I think, and in the lower side of it, I'm actually, like I said, in OKIP, and there's a museum here around how we used to mine and how previous exploration used to be and how underground development used to be. And it's actually fascinating how much we were able to achieve with what we know now with technology. I mean, the bottom left-hand side drawing there, you can see is pen and paper. So moving very much from a manually intensive and time-intensive, some would say archaic now, but it would have been very relative to the technology used at the time to unlock this exploration value. And I think that moving kind of on from that, this rapid space with pace is our view on where SLAM LiDAR and that ability to use it on surface and underground, the same platform across your mining license, whether on surface, whether it's an underground development or an old stope that you need to reconciliate. This creates that visualization, which you should be able to see as a visual, which I just push play now, of a drone flying into a draw point. These areas, previously inaccessible, are the exploration targets of the digital workforce that we as Dryker Mining Services are now offering the industry. And we're having lots of discussions around, what does this future look like? What does this adoption of technology mean for our mining clients? What are the skills they need to use to augment this, this robotics and automation drive and connectivity, etc. Which brings me to the future. And I thought just a nice a discussion topic, if any, is around cobot exploration. As you can see, our new best friend Spot, the enterprise version from Boston Dynamics, perched precariously on the edge of a large rock on a mine site. Our Spot's been tested and being POC'd in a number of leading mining companies around underground and surface mapping, security. Exploration is one of the ones that we kind of pushing now as we start advancing the levels of autonomy with our partners Emerson, so we could send it on exploration missions and literally an explore functionality. But the future on the cobots, for those of you who don't know, the cobots is the term is collaborative robots. So how do we get robots to collaborate and to enter, no-go areas where it's hazardous, the ground conditions aren't favorable in an underground example. What happens if it hasn't been cleared ventilation-wise? Flying low is the other aspect that we kind of talk about when we talk about Spot and this cobot. What are the conditions and geometries of getting this remote sensing capability of LiDAR and this visualization intelligence back to surface safely? And then creating flow. If you're wanting repeated scans and you're wanting to be able to measure and benchmark scan to scan, it's important we do the same kinds of scans and we scan in the same format and structure. So yeah, those no-go, fly, low, and create flow are very big parts of why we should be adopting robotics and automated data collection from the exploration side. And then maybe just as a tee off, because you'll see the battery then, and a lot of what we talked about recently in the panel was around this the forefront minerals. I think they were referred to, but there's all the battery related, the copper, the lithiums. We have good experience in moving batteries across borders, and it's a challenge just to move the batteries. I can only imagine the challenge in mining them. But the batteries is really the constraint and the limitation of how and where we can put these future cobots or robots into spaces to extract value. And the battery is literally about the flight time or the operation time. So for Spot, for example, we were approached by a company the other day to access a very old working that they were looking to revitalize. And we needed to be able to send a robot almost 3 kilometers into a mine, not knowing the conditions, not knowing what had happened. So really flying blind would be the right analogy there. And the reason that we couldn't use the drone, of course, is that to travel 3 kilometers at 1 meter per second wouldn't allow us to do so on the existing battery times, even for an advanced enterprise M300 drone from DJI. You're getting flight time with a payload like that, approximately 25 minutes in and out. So we'd leave a lot to be discovered, or we'd have to make that a fresh air base and slowly and iteratively unlock value on that exploration side if we were flying the drone. The analogy here and the kind of thought that I wanted to leave with your listeners today and the panelists is around this cobot, putting Spot as a ground robotics tool with a drone on its back with a virtual, I suppose, helipad of sorts, and to then release the drone only when we needed to, or only when the robot determined that it was a place that would be better to fly it. So the analogy that Spot is the first responder and walk slowly down the decline and ramp to an area, maybe a kilometer after, Spot has 90 minutes of battery, maybe conservatively, let's say 60, so half an hour of walking and half an hour back to retrieve the payload. But you could then save lots of battery time with carrying the drone up to 14 kilos on Spot to get the drone to a space where we would fly it. Potentially there's a ground fall, or there's an area of interest like a stope or a void that we'd have to fly over. That again unlocks a certain amount of visualization and additional capability of the robots working together or collaborating to get and I guess I suppose explore new frontiers. And that is not crossing seas, but I suppose crossing the new realms of old workings where, as we're mining and expanding operations, those marginal operations where the current commodity boom are becoming relevant and accessible. And not only with Spot being able to access those without the turbulence of the propellers and the drones with fines, we're seeing a lot of appetite and a lot of interest in our clients saying, how far can we push Spot? How far can we push Spot with the drone? Can we use that? Can we push the drone into these spaces? As they start building a better digital twin of the complete and whole of mine visualization. So yeah, that's all I had prepared for you today. I hope I left you with some questions and some thoughts, and I also hope that as part of the panel we can thrash it out, and be interesting to see our other panelists' views on some of the technology and visualization capability that we're offering out of a Dwyker Mining Services team. Thanks very much for the time. If you're in Johannesburg, please pop by our new technology showcase in Midrand. Be able to fly our drones in large warehouses and large halls. It'd be lovely to introduce you to our new best friend Spot. We have a technology showcase coming up in May, and we're exhibiting in Mining in Durban, booth 908. So we hope to see you guys all there. If you are, we'd love to host you. Thanks very much for your time, Laura and the team.
Super, Jamie, thank you so much. And so nice to see a refreshing, different approach to the topic today. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for that. Certainly a great ending to our exploration sessions today. Without further ado, we are just over the top of the hour, so I am going to hand back to our program director who will close out our session for the day. Thank you so much for joining us, and do remember, We have two handouts for you, our Mining Elite in Africa 2022 yearbook, which does feature Ivanhoe and Newcore Gold in further detail, and also our issue 1 of Mining Review Africa, which also focuses on the exploration sector. Thank you so much, Linkiwe. I'll hand over to you to close us out.
Thank you, Laura. Well, that's it for today. On behalf of Mining Review Africa, I would like to thank today's panel for sharing their valuable insights and with importantly, our sponsor, the Council for Geoscience, a key contributor and player in the South African exploration and mining space. We hope that these sessions have evoked in eagerness to rechannel exploration down on a fresh path through collaborative efforts. I'd like to remind you that you can access on-demand version of this event through our website, miningreview.com. And don't forget to register for the upcoming DRC Mining Week in-person event taking place at Lubumbashi on the 3rd of June 2022. You can get more information on the upcoming video after I'm done, or you can simply visit drcminingweek.com. That's all we have time for today. Thank